We're now at the office of Tom Vinson, the Superintendent of Trigg County Schools. He's going to tell us some of the many changes that have occurred in the school system since he has been a vital part of it. Tom, just tell us any of those things you like.
Okay, Louise, it's been an interesting history during the time I've been in the school system. Of course, to give you some of my own personal background, I'm a native of the county. I have been here through the one-room schoolhouse and attended a one-room schoolhouse all the way through to graduating from high school here. I graduated then from University of Kentucky with a BS degree in science. Later went back to Murray State University, received my master's degree in education, and now I have what we know in education is a rank 1 leadership certificate, which qualifies me for the superintendency. The interesting part of the school history probably began about the time I started teaching the system. I had not really intended to teach. I was called as a substitute teacher, enjoyed teaching, later decided I wanted to become a full-time teacher, went back to school to get my educational certificate. And all this ties in with what was happening at that time. Up until 1955, schools were basically financed locally. About this time, the state enacted the minimum foundation program, which was a new way of financing the secondary and elementary schools. And this placed a lot of the financial burden on the states. Along with the enactment of the minimum foundation program, of course, came new requirements. Teachers were paid according to their training and experience. As a result, all teachers in Kentucky were quickly required to complete their certification requirements, at least have a provisional certificate to teach. And all the old emergency certificates were ruled out. So the new school programs were staffed with competent, well-trained personnel. Up until this time, a person with a high school diploma could teach in the schools, and in many instances, because you're paying for the school system from local funds, this cost you less money. But the foundation program enabled the local districts to upgrade their schools as far as staff is concerned. Also happening about this time was the new Civil Rights Act. It was enacted and movement began to integrate the schools. Now, in Trigg County, it was an early action on the part of our people in that they moved to provide equal facilities for our blacks. This required a tax referendum for special voted tax for the building purposes, which was passed, and Mac Upton was built. At that time, in 1957, Mac Upton was probably one of the most modern school buildings in the state. Even in Trigg County, we were not familiar with school buildings that were fireproof, that had modern lunchroom facilities, that had labs, that had office areas, multipurpose rooms, good lighting, things of this nature. All the schools basically were fully equipped. And following this, of course, was another movement that began to affect our total curriculum. Sputnik was placed in orbit about this time by the Russians. And as a result, there was a massive movement throughout the United States to upgrade their science program. So the National Science Foundation started providing funds for better labs, better facilities for the school, and also they began to train the teachers in science to do a better job. And I was one of the recipients of this. In fact, it was probably because of the National Science Foundation and this new movement that I went back to Murray and received my master's degree. And I found that I was a much better teacher following this new training they were giving us, and with a new interest in science and with the school board building new facilities that provided good lab facilities and supplies for the students. There was a big movement by the students to get into these programs, so it was an expanded curriculum. And this went right into math, and eventually it expanded into other areas of studies. So the change from what was once maybe a static type of curriculum started moving towards a more expanded, broader more sophisticated technical programs. Also happening in Trigg County at this time was the purchase of land. Of course, the Tennessee River had been impounded, and quite a bit of land over there was owned by the federal government. Fort Campbell Reservation took quite a section of land out of the county, but then they also decided to build the Barkley Dam, which impounded the Cumberland River. And again, the Corps of Engineers purchased quite a bit of land. And soon after that, they purchased the land between the lakes. So all this put together took almost 50% of the land space in Trigg County off the tax rolls. This placed a real burden on the schools in terms of the loss of taxable land. The building fund tax was probably a lifesaver, because at the time Mac Upton was built, the communities agreed to increase their tax assessment. Trigg County had a low tax assessment, and therefore when they increased the tax value, the assessed value of the property, then funds for the schools were increased, and this gave the schools opportunity to match federal funds to build buildings that other school systems had not been able to do. We had some tragedies in the early 60s. The old high school, which was built by WPA in the 30s, burned. And while they were in process of replacing this, the school was in Quonset huts, which were substandard facilities. The principal died during, the high school principal died during this time. And so there was a change in administration, along with the new buildings that were going up at the same time. Now the new building was designed as part of a total complex where the old high school building had once stood. They were planning now to put a school complex with all schools on one campus. So maybe by virtue of the high school burning, they were able to do something that later became one of the best features of our total school program. And once they built what they could with the funds available at that time, they included a new high school, new gymnasium. Of course, there was a new cafeteria, and there was an area was the elementary. But there was not enough building there to house all the students that we had in Trigg County. We found that out quickly, so they could not consolidate all the schools into one facility at that time. Integration was taking place in a different way. The equal facilities program was not sufficient, so they had to abandon that and integrate all schools into one. When this happened, that included integration in transportation as well. And again, I was involved in this because in 1960, when the principal died, I was elected board as assistant principal. And then, as soon as the new buildings were done, I had an opportunity to become what is now the assistant superintendent. And that was just in time for me to get involved in the total integration program, the transportation program and all. So in about 1965, the school was totally integrated, and this was well ahead of most school systems. By virtue of the school being on one campus, at that time almost on one campus or close range of one another, integration was a much simpler process because we did not have the target areas and the busing problems and so forth that many of the other school systems had. One other thing was happening in the late 60s that affected us was the fact that teachers were becoming organized. They were not called collective bargaining units, but they had professional negotiations. And for the first time, teachers were using numbers to influence legislation and also to bargain with the boards. So there was a new phase of school that we had not dealt with previously. Of course, along with all of this, the federal government was beginning to appropriate quite a bit of money into federal programs to ensure integration, to take care of areas in which schools, because of their financial we're not being able to do proper instructions in reading, and this was the target area primarily. So we began to benefit from quite a bit of federal money that was poured into instruction and education. Now, in 1970, I became superintendent, just right after the board and the previous superintendent had asked the community to vote on a tax referendum to extend the special voted building fund tax. Now, this gave the board the opportunity to build the additional buildings that we had to have to completely consolidate the schools on one campus and to provide all the facilities we needed for a very broad curriculum. So soon after that, a new elementary building was constructed. An instructional center was added to the high school, middle school. A vocational building was constructed, and this did quite a bit for the curriculum of the school, because the new elementary was modern, carpeted, air-conditioned, open, allowed for a new type of educational curriculum that we had not had before, that we thought broadened the opportunities in elementary education. The instructional center broadened our libraries, our cultural areas, because we had a little theater here, we had a planetarium in it, things that we had not had previously, commons for students to be able to expand out of the halls and sit down and relax. The vocational building gave us new modern facilities, well equipped for new vocational programs that we had not had previously. So altogether, the final building program here completely consolidated all of the school onto one campus with all the facilities we needed for all the schools to fully benefit from it. And by virtue of the new buildings and facilities, we were able to take advantage of almost every new program that was available, special education programs, in which we added not only the mentally handicapped units, but the learning disabilities units, the speech and hearing units, the trainable units, to all the others we had. And in vocations, we not only had the home ec and agricultural units, but we added to these, of course, the distributive education units, the business and office units, and expanded the home economics units into gainful employment, the agriculture units, the horticulture. We had industrial arts added we'd never had before. Once this was all done, which was in the early 70s, our schools then had a self-evaluation and applied for the top ratings in the state as far as accreditation was concerned. And we now have a school system that is totally comprehensively rated, which is the top rating in the state. In addition, we are rated by the Southern Association of Schools, accredited by that association. And this does help our community, because when industry plans to move in, or businesses plan to move in, or people plan to settle in this area, they're impressed with the fact that our schools have a curriculum that would entitle their children to go to almost any school in the country and be qualified to go there. We have found that our curriculum has produced a large number of professional people in recent years. We have a large number of our graduates who are lawyers, a large number that are pharmacists and dentists and medical doctors, in addition to a great number of those who have their doctorates in other areas of education, whether it's agriculture or the histories or the sciences, which makes us feel that the background they received in our school qualified them to attend the better universities and colleges of the nation. Now we're getting ready to go into a new era. These things have been fine. We seem to be doing real well. We're always affected by the financial status of our community, our state, or nation. We're being pressed by the public now to go back to the basics, or to to emphasize the basics more. We're also having quite a bit of pressure to be accountable for what we're doing. There's a move now to require that our students pass a basic competency test before graduating. We're faced with a tax revolt from the public that says so many things are questionable in terms of where we're spending the state and federal tax money as well as local. So these things are ahead of us. We don't know what effect they'll have on education. They could, as have most things, they'll probably have a good positive effect in the long run, because it does make us review what we're doing and watch how we're spending the money. But most things, once they're aired, will be modified to do the best thing for the school system.
Mm-hmm. Tom, maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit more about the consolidation as it occurred through the years.
Again, Louise, this was one of the first for Kentucky, practically, was Trigg County's early consolidation, because most school systems did not want to consolidate, did not start consolidation. In fact, we still have school systems that have not consolidated. So Trigg County was a pioneer in the early consolidation to begin with. And when they built the first Trigg County High School, it included elementaries as well as high school. And this was in 1937. And on that year, a number of the small one-room elementary schools were consolidated along with the upper grades in 2 or 3 of the other high schools in the county.
I remember that.
And I'm not sure of the sequence exactly, but Golden Pond, Linton, and Cerulean, all 3 were high schools, had 4-year high school programs, and they sent part of their students to Trigg County that first year. Then, in 1939, Cadiz, as an independent school district, consolidated with the Trigg County School District, and all the high school students from the Cadiz High School came to Trigg County High School.
There was just 1 year in there that Cadiz High School and Trigg County High School functioned, wasn't it?
That's right, as separate units.
Uh-huh.
I'm not exactly certain when all 4 grades from the other high schools totally came to Trigg County High, but it was by 1940 they were all here, I believe. Now, during the war, we might have had 1 or 2 of the schools holding their 9th and 10th grades. I'm not real certain. But after World War II, the old high schools out in the counties became consolidated elementary schools, and all the little one-room schools in those communities were brought into the old high school centers.
Mm-hmm.
And probably very few one-room schools existed in the early 50s. Some did. Then by 1960, when we built the new school, even the elementary schools out in the county had been consolidated into the Cadiz High School and the new buildings out on the Trigg County complex.
I believe that Linton School, elementary school, must have come in because they came into the old Cadiz grade school it was then. That must have been about 1960, because if you remember, we moved out here into the new elementary and high school combined in 62, and I believe the Linton School was with us 2 years down there before we moved.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Cerulean came out here and joined us, and the new elementary school in 63, and the Golden Pond School in 64. And I guess that was the end of all elementary schools anywhere except the Trigg County Elementary School.
So we had kind of a process from going from the one-room elementary schools to the consolidated elementary schools in the community to the final total consolidation into our central complex here, which started in 1937 and ended, when did you say there, about 1964?
Must be 64. Do you remember how many one-room schools there were, what the largest number of one-room schools Trigg County had at any one time? Was it close to 60?
Well, I thought it was closer to 100.
Oh, maybe you're right.
And I have a list of all those schools, and I could easily count them, but the problem was it includes schools that started and closed, and at any one given time, I'm not sure what the greatest number was.
Yes, I know they didn't all exist at the same time. I was thinking, Tom, I recall a few of the elementary, the rural one-room schools that were moved into the old Cadiz graded school where I was a teacher, or the Trigg County Elementary School where I was teacher or principal. And if a school was moved in after it started, or after a teacher had been elected for that position, the teacher was moved in along with the school and given a position in the school, either Cadiz grade school or Trigg County Elementary School where her pupils were moved into. So no teacher lost her job, I guess, because of that.
It's true, and of course the board did not know, or the superintendent did not know what the enrollment would be until after school started. Because I think they had the opportunity to enroll their students in the schools at Cadiz or Trigg County if they so wanted to. Many of them did.
I believe that's right, too. And so sometimes if a school opened, and maybe 15 pupils, they would just close it out and move it a week or so later into here. Tom, you mentioned the MacUpton building. Now, what became of that building? How is it used now?
Of course, MacUpton building was the first new building we had, modern building, and it's now being used as a preschool unit. We have both the Head Start program there and the kindergarten program, and with 2 units in the, or actually 3 units in the Head Start and 2 units in the kindergarten, we have most of that building in use. In addition, of course, we use the building for other activities, community activities, when we need it, and the multipurpose room is used quite a bit by the community and also by our other school activities.
Do you know approximately how many children are enrolled out there in kindergarten or Head Start or both?
Head Start has approximately 60 preschool children enrolled. That's 4- and 5-year-old children.
Yes.
Now, the kindergarten are all 5-year-old children, or approximately that age, preschool children. And we have this time very close to 100 enrolled. And those are half-day program. We have 4 sessions, half-day each.
That's nice. I'm glad we have kindergarten now and as a part of our regular school system.
The kindergarten program, like so many of the other parts of the curriculum, improves the quality of your school. The better school systems in the past always were those who had kindergarten programs. The St. Louis kindergarten system was the first epitome of the good school systems, and most of Kentucky did not have kindergarten until just recently. So this has been one of the big improvements in education, in my opinion, is to be able to provide kindergarten programs.
I've noticed among my relatives who live in other states where the children do go to kindergarten, they seem to learn an awful lot. It seems to be a great advantage to them to attend kindergarten before they enter first grade. And I'm sure it's the same way here.
That's true. Now, do you want me to... Another part of our school system that seems to have gotten quite a bit of public attention has been our activities in the school. For a small school, we have received statewide recognition in our speech program, in our sports program, and in our music program. And this is good from the standpoint of Trigg County because people learn where Trigg County is, and the fact that they have these kind of programs kind of make them feel like we have a top quality student in this area. Now, our speech students have consistently won national awards and have been outstanding National Forensic League and have produced any number of job opportunities if students had good speech backgrounds, either in radio or public speaking or law, whatever. It seems to have been extremely beneficial to them. In sports, we have a very competent sports system in that I feel it's the type of program that's good for the students themselves. We won a number of state titles through our sports programs. We have expanded our campus, purchased additional land, and built additional facilities such as tennis and the football and the stadium and the playground areas that have allowed us to expand into this area more than we could have in the past. But when you have the football field or the tennis courts, you can add other kinds of activities on that as well.
Every now and then when I'm driving around here, I meet some fellow that I take it for granted is practicing for track.
That's
and
right.
I hear some good reports on that sometimes.
That's true, and that's a new facility that we did not have until recently. That is a track around, and we've won state meets in our track program because we've had this facility. And in music, we recently built a new music department, and we've expanded our music not only just to instrumental music, but we have a vocal music program that's going real good now. I've not mentioned the cafeteria program, but we built on to our existing cafeteria facility to expand it into 2 large dining rooms that are well equipped and also air conditioned, and it's following a new modern feeding program that has encouraged students to eat more. Our participation, particularly this year, is up, and teachers and students. And we feel like it's going to be a model for many of the other school systems around. In fact, our whole school program has served over the years as a model for so many of the school districts in this area. Not many school districts had open education, and they came to see our program. Not many schools had planetariums. Not many schools were consolidated. They could see the advantages of building on one campus. And many schools did not have the basic programs we had. Our vocational building, the programs we have there were exemplary in many instances. So they came to look. As we said, when we built our new complex in terms of physical activities, not many school systems had this type of campus plan, so they looked at this. We feel like
Trigg County has actually been kind of a model for the other schools for how long? Since 1960 at least?
Since 1960.
Ever since then.
That's true. We were the first to have educational television in this area. In fact, we were taking the signal from Nashville and had it, of course, transmitted through our whole system. And many school systems had not even heard of educational television at that time. Of course, the state did not have the Kentucky Network at that time. So we had lots of visitors and programs here to promote the educational television program.
I remember that, how excited we all were when we first got educational television.
And now it's broadened into a much broader program all over the state. And of course, many school systems have added that to their program now. Let's see, you might... Of course, the school finances always determine probably the quality of your program, because you can buy and build things if you have money. The minimum foundation program always provided a minimum program, but it guaranteed every school in Kentucky a minimum program. That was its advantage. Now, the financial structure of the school system has changed so much that our local taxes only provide less than 20% of our total funding. In fact, with the state collecting quite a bit of our local taxes, I doubt seriously we're locally providing over 10% of our total school finances. And that's the big change over the years. In the 30s, all the finances practically were local. Now, only a small percentage are local, which means the control of the schools are beginning to change from local control to state and federal control, because they control the funds that you receive. Now, the state will provide more than 50%, maybe 60% of the total funds now, maybe 65%. We're receiving approximately 25% from federal sources now. Lunchroom and federal programs all included. So many of the federal programs are essential to us now. The Title I program that we hear so much about. We have a Title VII program. We have a Right to Read program. We have adult basic education programs. We have career education programs, consumer education programs, gifted and talented. Any number of programs now that provide funds other than local sources or state sources, in addition to your vocational programs, some of them are federally funded. So the financial structure is such now that recent legislation in Title VII, as well as the Civil Rights Act, or Title X, which has to do with sex discrimination, and the Handicap Act, which has to do with the facilities being fixed so that handicapped can attend your schools. all these things are affecting our total school program tremendously. And we're having to operate within the context of federal regulation, state regulation, as well as local regulations. And this has made the program more difficult to control from the standpoint of bookkeeping, evaluation reports, and proposals that have to be done. So you see an increasing number of administrators we have. You see an increasing number of secretaries and accountants that we have. So these things have added to the cost of the program as well as receiving this money. We have a lot of things that are added to the program that hasn't cost us all that much. We have parent volunteers now that work in the school, and they're effective. We use aides in many instances rather than hiring additional teachers, and they will assist the teachers as paraprofessionals. Where you have a large number of students and a teacher, you can use a paraprofessional rather than hiring another teacher. All these things are involved in the way our total money is being spent now.
Now, the last year or two or three that I taught, we had teacher aides. Each teacher would perhaps have an aide 2 hours during the day, public grading papers or making bulletin boards or whatever on that now. I guess they still do things of that type, or take the children out to play or whatever.
That's true. Now, the federal programs will designate what aides can do that are employed through those programs. Now, we have general aides that the board employs to help principals with whatever task they feel like they can do. Parent volunteers normally are not paid, but they come in and assist teachers with quite a number of menial tasks or supportive tasks that the teachers need.
Do they work with individual children and individual problems, the volunteer parents?
They can. They can assist the teacher in memographing materials. They can assist with small group instruction, individualized instruction. They can help them on the playgrounds. There are a number of ways that parents can help and give the teacher a little more time to work with individuals and also maybe to plan better, particularly where they're working as teams. Now, in our elementary program, which is an open space program, teachers have to work on an individualized program basis, and that means they have to work as teams because it involves planning together and doing things together. When this is done, you need help for those students whose teachers planning at that time. So parent volunteers and aides and other specialists make this possible. So
they stay with the children while the teachers all get together to work out their plans.
That's true.
For a week or so at a time, I presume.
That's right. And this is done sometime on a limited basis when an aide can simply supervise work the teachers have given them while they are planning. It's not that the teacher's teaching, but they can supervise to see that the students are working on what the teachers have left them to do while they're planning. And a volunteer might come in not in this capacity, but still can take a student that's weak in reading and sit down and work with them individually on this.
And she could be a great help that way.
That's right.
Another thing you mentioned was the special education program for the trainable children and the educable children as well. You have those two programs here in school, don't you?
That's true.
Couldn't help but recall back down at the old school when we were beside the Baptist church, and the first special school for handicapped children was in the basement of the old Baptist church. And there was one teacher and must have been about 5 or 6 children over there. And sometimes she had a helper over there. And it has grown tremendously, the whole program has.
That's right. That was the beginning, and almost like the other specialists in our school, I can remember we had one guidance counselor in the school, and I can remember when we had one librarian in the school, because I can remember when we had just one special education teacher in the school, and you thought you were well equipped to have those. But now, of course, we've gone to 3 librarians and 4 guidance counselors, and 14 special education teachers, and it's that different.
The special education school, which originated in the basement of the Baptist church downtown, beside of our old Katie's graded school, must have been the beginning of it, and must have moved out here when the elementary school moved in with the high school out here in 62. Don't you guess that was it?
It's true.
We set up a unit for it, I suppose.
Right. The first handicap units basically were privately operated. if you remember, the churches or someone else.
I don't know who
Right.
financed that down there in the Baptist church.
We had some of the civic organizations provided. the
It
funds
wasn't
for
really under the auspices of the school, was it?
No, not at all.
That was just a private
That's true.
combination of interested individuals and the church.
You might remember when we had the Progress Center out here,
Yes, yes,
which
I
was
do.
not the school operated at all.
It was just
private.
across the road from the school,
That's
and
true.
not under the direction school.
Mhm.
Yes, that was before we came out here also.
That's
It
right.
must have moved from the Baptist church basement to this building across the road before 62.
That's true.
And then in 62, when we all moved into this big new building, which was high school and elementary school all together, then that was the first time it became under the school
That's true.
control,
It
wasn't
became
it?
a foundation unit and
Uh-huh.
provided us with unit. So it's a relatively new program as far as
Yes.
state funding is
But I
concerned.
think it's wonderful it has grown like it has, and so many handicapped people get an opportunity to benefit
That's true.
by it. Tom, I was thinking about the people who teach here now, and also the administrative group. A great percentage of them would be graduates of the schools here in Trigg County, wouldn't it?
That's true. Now, we did not intentionally become homegrown this way, but we have always, in selecting personnel that were equally qualified, given preference to those who live in Trigg County. And we've had a number who married Trigg Countyans and moved in as part of the school system, but probably 75% of our total staff, administrative and teaching staff, are local people that have graduated from the schools here, gone on to receive their training, and in return to be teachers in the system. And I will say this, that overall, those that are former Trigg Countyans are as fine a teachers as you could find anyplace. So we don't feel like we've lowered the quality of our instructional program by hiring local personnel.
Actually, the school, I guess, is considered fortunate to be able to furnish so many of its own teachers, you might say, and workers in general, administrators and teachers.
That's right. I feel like it has a carryover in their interest in the school, because they're Trigg Countyans, they have an interest in the school. They have an interest in the community, and they know the people in the community, and know the children in the community. So often this is an attribute as far as the school system is concerned.
And, of course, so many of them have their own children who are growing up and
Right.
going to school here, too. It gives them an added interest. Maybe you'd like to tell us a few things about the modern school's elementary curriculum. And
Of
how
course,
it's different.
the key word in an open space program is individualized instruction and team teaching. There are two key words there. You almost have to do this in an open program in order for it to be successful. You cannot teach students the way you did in the one-room schoolhouse as a self-contained room, where you have 30 students and you teach them all at the same time as a rule, or talking to them this way. Because if you did this in an open space school, there'd be more confusion than you could stand. So you have to work in small groups, and if you do work in large groups, several teachers go together to do this. If they're having a program, watching television, or having a drama program, or doing a singing program, or this kind of thing, you have to do it in groups rather than as an individual unit. So it changes from that standpoint, and the whole purpose of the open school is to give flexibility to teachers, to allow them to do things in small individual units all the way up to large group units. And they can share materials, and they can work as a team to utilize the strong points of any given teacher. New teachers are able to work with experienced teachers from the very beginning. Students have more freedom because they're given individual tasks to do, and centers are set up so they can go and do an additional task if they want to. Movement isn't a problem in an open space program, because movement is part of it. Noise is not basically a problem, because your noise level is kept to a tolerable pitch, and those that are in there are not aware of the noise level at all, and they soon adjust to this. Distraction is quickly overcome because the movement becomes commonplace, as though you and I were in a restaurant at a table. We just don't notice a lot of the activity going on around us. We're involved in what we're doing. The program strengthens the administrative use of the building and his supervision, because he can quickly supervise his teachers and what's going on. And it is a far less costly program than the self-contained rooms as a rule, because the equipment usage and the lack of walls. It's easier to meet fire regulations and all these things. So there's so many factors involved in why you go to this program. It's not the answer to all educational problems, because it depends on the teacher that teaches in it. Depends on the supervision you give. You still have to control students the same way you did in self-contained rooms. Discipline is an important part of it. There are areas in which you cannot have real loud noises, and areas you can't have real quiet. So you have to set aside special areas for this. And we have areas for the music program, we have areas for the physical education program, we have areas for the art program, so that they can leave the main building to get into this kind of activity. And we think it takes care of it.
I mean, how many special teachers do you have besides the regular classroom teachers? You mentioned music and art. Do you have any others?
Physical education teacher and the librarian, the guidance counselor, who does quite a bit of classroom instruction too.
Yes.
Then we have, of course, our special units, the learning disabilities and the speech and hearing, the educated mentally handicapped and the trainable mentally handicapped. We have special Title I reading teachers, special math teachers that are part of the program. And they're all integrated into the total faculty, and they work as part of the teams, so that a lot of the work is coordinated, or it should be done this way if it's effective.
So you have a lot of special teachers in.
That's true.
Surely, as many teachers and as many well-trained people as you have here, all the needs of all the children should be met.
That's true, and in our administrative staff, we've added directors of curriculum in the school. They're known publicly as assistant principals, but in our school, they're really instructional supervisors and curriculum directors.
Yes.
And they work primarily with the development of the curriculum, work with the teachers in the selection of textbooks and new programs, and in the in-service programs and workshops, and make certain that our schools are progressing as they should in the curriculum development.
So the assistant principals have specific duties that actually aren't assisting the person.
That's right, not just counting money and taking care of the sports programs and all of this.
Not just helping the main one.
That's right, and loading buses.
They have basic jobs.
Let me say, Louise, that I've had fun this morning doing this. It's good to reminisce, and sometimes it makes you feel real good that you've done as much as you have or been associated with it. I don't really like to say what I've done, because it's been an association with so many people over a long period of time that I'm just glad to have been a real part of it. I know you have too, as a former teaching assistant. And I feel like maybe something of this nature, if we'll record it occasionally or make a record of it, it does give us a scope of what's been going on over the years.
Yes, I'm a firm believer in reviewers being good, reviewers of any situation. Now, we have reviewed the school system. Maybe it'll be beneficial to somebody, if
That's
not
true.
to us. It may be beneficial. Since you're still in the field, maybe it'll be beneficial to you in planning your future work also. Well, thank you a lot, Tom.